So first of all, just to give some background about myself, I'm not only the director of studies at the school, but I oversee the sort of sixth form and GCSE at Ashbourne. I'm the line manager to James, who's the leader of faculties of our teaching staff, and I'm also a part of the safeguarding team and head of admissions. So when I give you my feedback now, I can give you my thoughts as a sort of holistically across the school to give you kind of sort of general opinion about Ashbourne and also about A-levels in general. So for this presentation today, we're going to look at some sort of key areas. When we can look at what are A-levels and the advantages of them, how they're assessed, looking at subject choices, and why study at A-levels at Ashbourne, and also the entry of A-levels and how you get into them, and also particular things you should think about in terms of tips for success at sort of A-level standards. So as we go through the different points today, do ask questions. As Chris said, I'm here to help you. Hopefully, I can help you get more informed about A-levels and Ashbourne, and let's hope that this webinar does that. So first of all, in terms of A-levels, they're obviously a sort of pre-university qualification that are sort of the standard qualification used for UK university applications. Normally a 2-year A-level program, the first year being year 12 and the second being year 13. And usually these are obviously assessed through examinations, coursework, and sort of practical assessments. So that's a sort of general overview about A-levels in general. I think some of the advantages of A-level is it allows you to sort of focus in on your strengths. You can specialize earlier. So with things like the IB or other sort of educational systems, you have to study a wide variety of different subjects. At Ashbourne, you can get ready to focus in on those subjects that you enjoy and are obviously specific towards the qualifications that you want to do at university. It's also an internationally recognized qualification and can be used to apply to many universities all around the world, and something that's good to know. So in terms of the assessment, it's usually a 2-year A-level program. You can do a 1-year, but generally it's a 2-year program, and the assessment will be taken at the end of the program. At the end of 2 years. It used to be a modular system. We've moved to linear, and therefore all of the assessment marks are right at the end of the 2-year course. Obviously, some courseworks are done throughout the program, but in terms of examinations, they would be done in May and June of the second year. At Ashbourne, we do mocks and reports, feedback each half term. So therefore, as students, you get to sort of see how you're progressing throughout your programs. There's 8 different junctions throughout the program where you can see how you're progressing. And at the end of first year, Ashbourne, you will sit either an internally assessed AS qualification or an external qualification in AS. So for example, if you're taking subjects like biology, chemistry, maths, and physics, Ashbourne has come to the conclusion that it's good to get an AS qualification so we can see how you're getting on and be assessed formally. With subjects like, for example, fine art, graphic design, etc., we don't see the value in gaining the AS after 1 year for a variety of different reasons. But whether you get internally or an externally assessed AS result, there's a few things to note. First of all, from Ashbourne's point of view, that can be used for progression into year 13. We need 3 Cs to get into Ashbourne's year 13. And also you can use for university application purposes in terms of predicted grades. We'll be having a meeting tomorrow at this time, which gives some more information about university application. We can talk more about that end. And it's just to give you kind of an idea that at the end of the day, the AS qualification, no matter what grade you get and whether it's internally or externally assessed, that does not count towards your final A-level result. Your final A-level is over the 2 years and the exams are at the end. That's the linear system. So some people sort of say, well, is the linear system actually a more difficult assessment, or is it getting harder than the modular system? Well, I've given you an example here. I think the point is this. The exams in general, I think, are more challenging to get the higher marks. That's true. So, for example, in this particular point, you've got A-level maths of 2017. If you got 54% of the total marks, available, you would have got an E. In 2019, if you got 54% of the total marks, you'd have got a B. So therefore, obviously, quite significant change there. The difficulty of the paper last year for mathematics was incredibly difficult, but the same number of students will get A's, B's, C's, D's, and E's. And if you notice, the national average for A-star A was still around 26%, and that was the same as it was 3, 4, 5 years ago. It changes slightly. But just this gives you an idea. When it says it's harder, it just means, yes, the assessments are actually harder to get all of the marks, but still to be the same general distribution of the grades in terms of letter grades. So subject choices, there's different things to think about here. You know, how many subjects should you take? You know, and the key points to consider with your choices: suitability for certain individual programs, university programs. We'll look at that in a moment. Facilitating subjects or informed choices. You might have heard these phrases, and we'll come on to that. Native languages, and then obviously looking at what Ashbourne does and sort of suitable sort of combination tips that you should bear in mind. So in terms of how many, I think generally speaking, I would suggest you to start with 4. Now, some schools may well force you to pick 3, and that may well be the structure of their timetable. At Ashbourne, you are allowed to take any combination of subjects up until the 1st of July, which is one of the points towards the bottom there, which allows an incredible amount of flexibility for our students. So you start with 4. You know, invariably, a university offer is going to be based on 3 subjects. So there's no real need to carry on with 4 for the entirety of the program, nor would we suggest that you do so. There are some cases where that's not the case. And I think that's in particular if you're applying for a mathematically related degree program at very competitive universities. For example, if you applied for engineering at Cambridge, I would imagine that they would expect you to take maths and further maths, and then maybe something like physics and chemistry as well. On the websites, they will generally talk about 3, but I think that's just to give you an idea. Start with 4, and when you're ready, particularly at Ashbourne, discontinue 1 to focus on the other 3. At Ashbourne, another nice feature is that in the first 2 weeks of your A-level program, you can change your subjects timetable dependent. And that's nice because I think there's a big difference between GCSE to A-level, and there's also a big difference for those kids that are coming from overseas. You want some flexibility and give, and I think that's a key thing in the first 2 weeks to offer some of that to students. Please feel free to ask questions. I'm here to help. So other things, so we talked about university requirements. You need to think very carefully about which subjects you enjoy. It's a 2-year program. Make sure you choose your subjects well, because you're going to be, you know, hitting the books, you know, every week, and you need to make sure that you've got a real passion and interest towards those subjects. You need to also think about which subjects you are going to be successful in. And also another point is maybe to keep your options open. So some students out there will be thinking, well, I'm thinking about maybe a medical degree pathway, but also possibly finance, economics. What subject should I take? Well, the point there is, for something like medicine, definitely going to need chemistry, and biology would be a good idea. For finance-related degree program, take mathematics. So therefore, you want to kind of keep it broad if you're looking at 2 different directions to go in. So that's another consideration with the subject choices, especially at the beginning when you start off with 4. So we're now going to look at sort of individual programs for degrees. We're not going to go into everything, but just some examples which you can consider. So with engineering, for example, mathematics, physics, pretty much standard that expect you to do that. If you're applying for a chemical engineering pathway, then obviously chemistry would make sense, and software engineering, computer science. You know, Ashbourne offers an engineering program, so all these things can be taught and discussed throughout the program about how to tailor your program in your application accordingly. And for the top universities, most definitely, they're probably going to like you taking something like further mathematics. Doing some research into this, at Imperial College London, they've given out the quote here in relation to your 3rd subject. So maths, physics, your first 2. The 3rd one, the preferred subject, is further maths. They like it. And I think the same thing is going to be the case if you're applying for stuff like economics. We'll come on to that a bit later. So medicine degree, chemistry is a definite. Biology is usually sort of an expected subject. And then there's a 3rd subject, I think, that you can have a range here. We had a student that got in for medicine a couple of years ago, and music was his 3rd subject. I was talking to an applicant a couple of years ago that got in with fine art as their 3rd subject. But generally speaking, I think subjects like maths or physics would make sense as a 3rd subject. And for those students that come to Ashbourne, taking advantage of the medical school program that's weekly sort of clinic that we offer to support students with this is absolutely something that you'll need to do if you're looking to go on to medical degree pathways. So at King's College, Cambridge, the way they talk about that there is, yes, you must take chemistry, and then your second subject, you should choose maybe either biology, maths, or physics, and they recommend the same combination for your third. So you see, the more competitive degree program, they're looking at challenging A levels, of which obviously biology, chemistry, and maths absolutely ticks those boxes. So finance-related degree, again, take mathematics. That's going to be critical. You know, if you're taking things like some types of business or marketing, they might be a bit more flexible. But if you're applying to LSE, UCL, or you know, one of those top caliber universities, mathematics really is a given of a subject they're going to expect. In fact, far more than something like economics, even if you're applying to economics at LSE. So I think that just to bear that in mind, and if you can take further mathematics as well, that's obviously a big plus point. We do offer a finance program as well as medical and engineering. And for those students, this is another great opportunity to kind of sort of help tailor your university application. So as I just mentioned about LSE, you know, they need A-star AA as that's their general basic entry requirements. I would say if you're applying to LSE, you should expect to get 3 A-stars. They do not require economics as a subject, which might surprise one or two of you. Same goes for law. If you're looking to apply for law at LSE, you don't need to take law as an A-level. And this was one of the reasons why a few years ago, Ashbourne discontinued it as an A-level subject, because I think that those applying for law are far more interested in whether you took English or history or whatever it might be and have a sort of fresh start for degree level. But again, further mathematics is most definitely desirable. And you must also show you've got analytical as well as writing abilities. So taking subjects like economics, history, politics, etc., alongside things like math will show and convince universities of subjects like economics that you are a suitable candidate. So art degree, I think one big thing to consider here is if you've got a real interest in like textiles design, fine art and graphic communication, that's fabulous. I wouldn't take all 3. And the reason for that is the practical workload is significant. Keep it to 2. You can maybe well start with 3, but I would suggest very strongly that you don't try to continue with 3 throughout your program because you'll become exhausted, right? An excellent sort of supplementary subject is art history, which isn't offered at many colleges in the UK, but Ashbourne does. And this is very, very good subject for students to take, especially if they're looking to sort of supplement their research of artists and knowing more about the history of art. It's an excellent subject, not only for A-level, but for those university applications and interviews. Obviously, portfolio is going to be a key part of the art application, and Ashbourne offers online / physical portfolio classes on a weekly basis. The other excellent advantage of coming to Ashbourne for an arts type degree program for the future is in the first term between September and December of your first year, you are actually exposed to fine art, textiles, and graphic communication on a carousel, irrespective of whether you've chosen it as one of your subjects. So the first term, you get exposed to all of the arts, and then at Christmas, you determine which way you're going to specialize. And this is very important because many students studying GCSE or art in other countries are maybe not fully aware of all the variety of different directions you could go in with an art subject. And this is an excellent selling point that we've got at Ashbourne. So
sorry, Lee, I've got a couple of questions here.
Sure.
Yeah, I've got a question here from Gulchin. He's asked how many hours each subject per week.
So we do it in double lessons. So it's 6 hours per subject per week as a general rule. More hours are normally given to sort of art-based subjects and potentially for those students that are doing it in 1 year, but generally it's 6 hours per subject per week.
Okay, and then he's got another question here. If the student is an international student, can they take only 3 subjects?
Yes.
Okay, great. Does that answer your question, Gulchin? Is that okay? Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything else, Chris?
That's it for now. Thanks.
Great. Okay.
Sorry, Lee, we've got another question here as well. From Michelle, she asked, are there any independent study times for students?
Can you be a bit more specific?
Yeah, Michelle, do you mean sort of timetable and independent study times? Is that what you're referring to? Yes.
No, we don't do independent sort of studying times, but what they do have is that each student has a personal tutor that they meet on a weekly basis that's there to kind of just make sure that they're online with their studies. And also we offer individual clinics for each subject. So let's say, for example, a student has got questions about biology, they can obviously see their teacher outside of class, but also they can go to their weekly clinic to get extra support. And there's lots of support programs at the school, like mentoring. So we get year 13 students to mentor year 12 students as well. So they can get lots of additional support throughout the week.
Okay, is that okay, Michelle? Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Another question, Lee, from ARZ. They've said, is a combination of maths, biology, and computing a good one because it's between a medical and engineering program?
Maths, biology,
and computer science.
And they're thinking about a medical program.
Yeah, choosing between medical and engineering.
You've got to take chemistry. I mean, what I would say with computing, I think maths still trumps computer science. The rate of change with computing on a yearly basis makes the A-level spec somewhat defunct each year. But the underlying of maths is going to be required, obviously, for computer science learning. The computer science schools at Ashbourne, they do a fabulous job. So I would definitely recommend it. So maybe maths, computer science, and if you're trying to keep sort of medicine open, then chemistry definitely. And you could probably get away with just about by not doing biology. But if biology is one that you're considering at the beginning, then take all those four. So maths, chemistry, biology, and computer science.
Does that answer your question? Great. Okay. And then another question here from Lee from Nears. She says, is a combination of physics, chemistry, and maths a good one? Also, what can we add as a fourth subject?
Well, I think it very, very much depend on the sort of individual cases of students. What I'll do is, when I come through this next bit, which comes on to talk a little bit more about that, if you want kind of individual sort of discussions about your own child's situation, then it'd be good to do maybe as a separate meeting as well.
Okay. Is that okay, Nizza? Not hearing from her, but I think if we carry on here, and then if there's any
yeah. Okay, so another thing you might have heard about is facilitating subjects or informed choices. So basically, the Russell Group universities, which in essence is kind of like the Ivy League of the UK, if you want to look at it that way, are sort of the top 24, it's a bit of an argument, the top 20, 24 or 5 universities in the UK that came together to determine some of the subjects they felt were more challenging than others. And I think as a general rule, this, even though they don't talk about it so much now, it's still quite valid. So let's say you're applying for law, okay, and you look at the facilitating subjects here, you've got English, history, and maybe a language. So, if you're applying to law at LSE or something like that, then taking English, history, French, or English, history, and mathematics or something like that, I think is still going to be a stronger combination than if you study something like English, film studies, and fine art. That's still going to be in place. What you have to look at, though, there's a website out there called Informed Choices. When I send this slideshow to everyone, there'll be a hyperlink which you can click on when you go to this slide. Now, when you go to Informed Choices, what it does is it tells you for each sort of the main sort of degrees, what are the required or suggested subjects. Now, you've got to remember this is summarizing all of the universities in the UK. So whilst it is a good idea to go to the Informed Choices, I would strongly, 1000% recommend you go to the individual universities, especially if you're applying to Imperial, Cambridge, LSE, for example, and look at what they say before you come to your final decisions. That is a very, very important point in terms of your subject choices. Okay, native languages. Take advantage of your strengths. If you're fluent in Persian or Arabic or Chinese, Russian, Spanish, or whatever it might be, I've heard students say to me, I've done A-levels, I'm doing A-levels because I want to focus on new subjects. Why would I want to spend any time doing my own language, which I can speak perfectly? Now, I think it's it's a very interesting argument. But my point is, why not take advantage of the fabulous strength that you've got, that you speak a number of different languages? Take it. All right. So the way Ashbourne operates with this, if you're, let's say, fluent in Spanish, you wouldn't join a normal 2-year Spanish program. You join a 1-year program of 2 hours a week, which basically sort of tops you up and gets you ready for the examination. The language exams are more difficult and challenging than they used to be, and you can't just sort of turn up and hope to get an A. You've got to do some preparation work. But as a general rule, I would strongly recommend you do this as a backup plan for universities. So let's imagine you apply for you've got biology, chemistry, and maths as your 3 A-level subjects, but you also took Spanish. In the end of year 1, in your second year, you get 3 Bs. You might be able to use the Spanish to still apply to quite competitive universities. That's point number 1. Point number 2, many universities will accept your native languages as one of the 3 subjects for the offer. So, I mean, I just think it's madness if people don't take advantage of this. Ashbourne absolutely puts plans in place to make it happen. Take advantage of it. This is most definitely my recommendation. Subject availability Ashbourne. So there's sort of groupings of, you can argue quite extensively about what's a humanity and what's a science, etc., etc. I've just put these into these different categories for now. So you've got practical-based subjects. You've got the arts, fine art, graphics, textiles. If you're interested in photography, we don't do it as an A-level, but we do have a darkroom. And absolutely, many of our art students use a lot of photographic elements as a part of their art subjects. Obviously, music, drama, and film studies. For humanities, obviously, English and history, complemented very well with subjects like philosophy, classics, and politics. With the maths and science, you've got obviously your usual subjects there: biology, chemistry, maths and physics, computer science and economics, and obviously we do further mathematics. And by the way, at Ashbourne, we have a large proportion of our students in year 12 that do take further mathematics. So it's quite a strong point of the school.
Just a couple of questions here, Lee.
Sure.
So Atul has asked, is physics, computer science, graphics, and economics a good combination, I assume he means, and what options are open for university? So that's physics, computer science, graphics, and economics.
Well, I mean, I think first of all, if you're taking physics straight away, you say physics, maths, graphics, and
physics, computer science, graphic design, and economics.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling would be why leave out maths? I mean, that would be my feeling. That does give you a lot of different combinations of paths that you can go into, but I always think maths does, unless you've got a strong sort of negative feeling towards the subject area, it sort of underpins economics, it underpins computer science and physics. So you've got to think very carefully about, if you're going to choose those type of subjects, how maths impacts that, and we'll come on to that in a moment. But it's an interesting choice, but I'd like to obviously meet the students to find out more about their individual circumstances before giving further feedback.
Okay. Atul says, thanks, that's great. Question here from Charlie. They say, to apply for architecture, is it good to choose mathematics, physics, fine art, and history of art, or a combination of maths, physics, fine art, and further mathematics?
I think the first choice was an excellent thing. I don't think really architecture is necessary to take further mathematics. If you do, it's fine. But your first choice, I think, was perfect. You've got the lovely complements of maths and physics and art and art history. They fit extremely well together. And actually, many students applying to sort of Cambridge for architecture may well take maths in the first year and then still go on to take those 4 subjects. So that I think is a great combination.
Okay, Charlie, let me know if that's okay, and if you've got any follow-up questions. Adelka has asked here, Lee, is Czech available as an A-level? It isn't in many colleges, so just thought that they'd ask.
So that again, isn't?
Is Czech available as an A-level language?
As far as I'm aware, no. But I'm always on the lookout for new A-levels. So if you do find out that it is, please do let me know. But as far as I'm aware, it's not, unfortunately.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, Adelka. Let me know if you've got a follow-up question. And Ali has asked, is biology, chemistry, maths, and psychology good for medicine? And if we want, can we drop it?
What drop what?
I assume you mean, can you drop psychology, Ali says, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an excellent combination of subjects as well. And yes, you can drop psychology to focus on 3.
Okay, thanks very much, Lee.
Great. So then obviously languages. So just a reminder, we've got practical based subjects like arts, but humanities, sort of mathematical, sort of science based subjects, and then languages. So and we've talked quite extensively about sort of how you can take advantage of your native language. There is some flexibility here, but we deal with things on a very case by case basis. So if there is a subject that I haven't mentioned at some point, you're welcome to speak to me after, and we can discuss that. In terms of suitable sort of combination tips, as I mentioned, maths underpins a variety of different subjects. Don't take more than 2 RA levels. And I would definitely recommend at least 1, preferably 2, facilitating subjects for sort of top ranked universities. Whilst they may not talk about it now, I still think it's the case. I've repeated the point there, so forget about point number 4. And also, this is an interesting point, no coursework subjects. So some of you out there might find exams stressful and you may not perform at your highest level. A subject like film studies, which is over 30% coursework based, or music or drama, you're then going to the final examination in a far stronger position, because to do the coursework over a longer period of time is really just going to assess your ability, your raw ability in that subject and how you've developed over time. Whereas exams obviously can assess not only your ability and knowledge base, but how you can perform under pressure. So that's something worth considering in terms of your subjects. And then obviously, if English is not your first language, then think very carefully about which A levels you take. English literature is a very challenging A level, for example, or history, for someone whose English is not their first language. Not to say it's impossible, just think about it. So,
Lee, sorry, just a few more questions on subjects here.
Sure.
Niz has asked, what subjects should be taking up for pursuing aeronautical engineering?
Absolutely, maths and physics, and I would put into that point further mathematics and potentially sort of computer science as well. I think a sort of combination of those 4 would be quite interesting.
Okay, Niz, let me know if you've got a follow-up question on that one. Anna has asked, is the music coursework an A level oriented around theory and classical pieces, or is it mixed genre?
Well, basically, for the music A level, it's split into 3 parts. So you've got a practical component, you've got a compositional work. We have to work in terms of making a piece of music yourself, and then you've got the theoretical aspect. Generally speaking, for those students that are looking to do music, you must make sure you've got grade 5 theory. Without grade 5 theory, I think you'll run into trouble there. But for more details about music, I'm happy to speak after today in more depth, if you like. Okay, thanks, Anna. Let me know if you've got any more questions on that. Michelle has asked, can a 4th subject be dropped at any given time? At Ashbourne it can, other schools maybe not. Okay, thanks, Michelle. And finally, Adelka says, if we don't take a language as an A level, are there options to take the language as an extracurricular activity like a club? Yeah, absolutely. So we do different language clubs throughout the week. So you could absolutely do to supplement your learning. And this is quite a key point to the argument between sort of A level and IB. So IB would, those that sort of promote IB would argue, well, you get a broader educational experience, and therefore, that allows you to be ready for university. The A level, people say you can focus and you can make sure you specify and focus on the subjects that you do well. But the good thing of A level is that doesn't stop you from still going and learning a language, or or learning an instrument, or whatever you want to do. So I think, yeah, absolutely, you could join language clubs at the school. Okay, thanks, Adelka. Anna, I've made a note of that. We'll get in contact with you to arrange a discussion with Lee after this. Isabella has asked Lee, she says, for veterinary medicine, should you do 4 A levels? I would just say that start off with 4, but focus on 3. They're going to be far more interested in how you get on in things like the UCAT or any other sort of entrance tests from universities. If you're doing biology and chemistry and one other, maybe maths and physics, that's sufficient. Okay, great. Let me know if you've got another question, Isabella, and anyone else, please do continue with the questions. But thanks very much, Lee. Thanks, Chris. Right. So in terms of Ashbourne, then, what makes Ashbourne any different? And I think that we always think about some key things. You go to the hairdresser to get a haircut. You come to Ashbourne to get your grades and go on to university. But also, we want to make sure that that the students are having a life-changing experience. We are preparing them not only to get to university, but to make sure they've got the skill set necessary to flourish during that time. So how do we do that? I think one key way is personal attention. Small class sizes of less than 10. You know, that each student's got a personal tutor. This individualized UCAS support. You're not left alone. I've heard some horror stories of students being, completing their university application with no support from schools whatsoever. And lots of interventions. All the time. Ashbourne, we do mocks and assessments every half term, and through that assessment, we then get students to review their own work and consider how to improve. So all the time reviewing things, looking at how people can improve, and not looking at the sort of overall. We're looking at individual students, very personalized approach. And I think this point is very important during this current stage. I mean, obviously, Ashbourne, as you might have, if you came to the webinar we had earlier about guiding our ambition, we very much had to react quite quickly and swiftly in this type of situation to move to online learning in the middle of March. And one of the reasons we were able to do that so successfully is because we are quite a dynamic and small organization. So therefore, change, whilst it may well be painful for larger organizations, and I'm not doubting the challenges that Ashbourne faced, we can move more quickly. And therefore, if you join in Ashbourne, you're going to get a personal approach to education, which most definitely leads to improved performance. So as I just mentioned before, each half term, you get a mock examination. So the end of 2 years, okay, you've had 8 mocks, okay? You've had 8 mock examinations over 2 years. For each half term, you're going to get a report. You're going to get feedback from your teachers with a working grade and a target grade. And then you as individuals, you have to look over your report and then give yourself targets. So therefore, to some extent, you're giving yourself a self-appraisal each half term. So that not only helps you get ready to perform well at A-level, but obviously prepares you for your future life in working in jobs and dealing with appraisals. Rather than your boss telling you how you should improve, you can come to those appraisals and say, well, look, I've identified these areas and this is what I need to do. And that is a very empowering, and that's something we try to make and instill in all of our students. So this sort of developing independence and maturity, trying to treat students like a grown-up. They're on a first name basis. I'm Lee, not Mr. Kirby. There's no uniform. It's a student-led adult approach to education. That the teachers aren't lecturing like I am today. The teachers aren't lecturing to the students. It's a Socratic teaching method. That it's a question. The students are involved in questioning, and through that curiosity and inquisitiveness, they can then learn about Ashbourne and studying and improve their knowledge. So we try to develop that within each individual. So one of the things I would absolutely say is start early. Make sure whatever you do with regards to your A-levels, do not leave it to September. You've got a great chance now in June, July, and August. And I'm sure many of you have suffered many different challenges over the last few months. But this presents an opportunity. There's those that will look at this situation and they won't take advantage of this opportunity. This is a chance to really help looking at how you're going to differentiate yourself from other students, which is also, we'll talk about tomorrow in the UCAS webinar, which you're more than welcome to attend as well. But get your books in advance. Ashbourne will make sure that happens. Get a plan for the summer. Lee, here's some things I'm thinking about doing about engineering. What do you think? We've got a library of over 1,000 entries that are building up about ideas for what students can do over the summer. Ask, be proactive. We're here to help. We really care, and I mean that. It's a great kind of sort of family, sort of community feel at the school. We genuinely want students to do well. So we've got a great safeguarding and welfare support team. The personal tutors are proactive in their action, as are subject teachers. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of interventions throughout an academic year, whether in physical or online. We're doing whatever we can to make sure that we boost students' performance, make sure they feel supported and safe, and especially during this time. Ashbourne's a selective environment. Every single student at the school is interviewed. We're very keen to ensure we take on students that are motivated, committed, ambitious. They want to go on to the best universities, but also capable. We have to consider that from year 12 to year 13, students need to get 3 C's in your end of year 12 examinations to go into year 13. It's not to say we wouldn't accept someone. Sorry, get some water, sorry. it's not to say we wouldn't accept someone who got 2 C's and a D, or a C and 2 D's into year 13. But what it would do, it would lead to us saying, well, why did that happen? And were you fully committed to your program? So in the year 12, just offers Ashbourne the opportunity to say, look, year 13 is serious business. We want to make sure every single student in year 13 is absolutely focused to try their very, very best to go to the best universities. Because we feel by having that kind of selective environment, it can have a kind of real sort of team spirit. And that also helps boost the results, in my opinion.
Just a few questions, Hilly.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Adelka's asked, even if a student is to receive a scholarship, I think that there are still certain fees that add up to a considerable amount. Are there any bursaries available for students that performed exceptionally in their scholarship exams but aren't able to meet every single financial requirement?
Well, we'll deal with this on a case-by-case basis. And I think that if you feel comfortable, if after this particular presentation, book a meeting with me separately. I mean, Ashbourne, does offer quite significant scholarships. That's true. But I mean, in terms of the individual circumstances, I'd like to speak to you separately, if that's okay.
Okay, let us know if you've got any more questions on that. Ali's asked, for A-level maths, do we start off with pure mathematics or with statistics and mechanics at the start of the first year?
So there'd be 2 classes. They do spend 4 hours on the pure side, because it's 66% of the elements of the program, and then they normally start with, well, normally statistics, then mechanics, but you spend 2 hours a week going on that side of the program. So they're running parallel.
Okay, thanks, Ali. Michelle's asked, could I make an appointment to chat about drama and the scholarship application? Michelle, I'd be very happy to contact you after this to follow that up. So very happy to do that. A1 Beats has asked, if I'm looking to do music, Spanish, English and history, as I'm looking to be a musician, would I need to carry on with all 4 subjects?
No.
Okay, fine, thanks. If there's any more questions, let me know. Gretchen's asked, do you have boarding provision? Where do your international students live?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, Ashbourne is not a boarding school, but we have a lot of overseas students at the school that stay within sort of host families and hostel accommodation, and also many educational agents out there also work with guardianship firms to support students in that way. I mean, many students like coming to London, but parents obviously want to confirm that their kids are going to be safe. So, hostels, host families, and obviously through guardianship firms, accommodation options can be sought, but Ashbourne is not a boarding school.
Okay, thanks, Gulchin. Let me know if you've got further questions on that. And A1 Beats, we would be happy to contact you to talk about scholarship. We'll make a note of that and follow up with you after this. Thanks very much, Lee.
Right. So the next point here is, I mean, Lucy there is no Lucy, but it's just an example. And I think that this is quite an important thing to consider. Quite often I've heard through sort of my 20 years being involved in education, or you go to these conferences talking about students and their potential, what's the highest grade they can achieve. And I think getting away from that discussion to more discussing, well, how long will it take to get there? I think it's far more of a positive discussion. Saying, can she get an A? Well, that suggests there is a ceiling. I'm more in favor of every single student that gets accepted at Ashbourne, I believe can learn, and they can learn effectively. And if they can learn effectively, then it's only a matter of time. So especially for those students that might be watching this today, who maybe are performing at, let's say, a 4, 5 or a 6 at GCSE level. Now, if you translate those grades to A level, you would not expect to get A's from a statistical point of view. But it's not to say you can't use June, July and August to catch up, to get ahead of the A-level program. I mean, why not? Why couldn't you get 3 A's at A-level? People need to think differently. And being positive about your future is really, really important. And if all of a sudden that positivity is tempered by a sort of pessimistic outlook and sort of more realism, it may well just lead to a scenario where you don't even try. So my thinking is to move from the kind of sort of, can she get an A, to a, well, let's see how long do we think it can happen? And then what do we need to improve? Every day, look to improve. And I think that's a more of a positive outlook. So the principal at Ashbourne is a teacher. And I think that therefore, as parents and the students, you can be confident that the quality of teachers delivering lessons is going to be very high. Mike is absolutely very particular about who he puts in the classroom. So therefore, you can feel confident. And you can also feel confident about our approach during this time. You know, all we want is to make sure that we offer the very best education we can, and knowing that the principal is a teacher, he's thinking on your behalf, and he wants to make sure he can back up all of the promises we've made should help to reassure you. So prove it. So all these things sound really great, right? But does it actually work, right? So I think one thing, you know, in terms of A-level performance, we've averaged around 50% A star A for the last 6 or 7 years. 1 in 5 students last year gained AAA or above. And in terms of improvement, you know, this is an important aspect here as well. There's an assessment called ALICE, which each of the students take at the beginning of year 12, which projects the future A-level results. This assessment was created by Durham University. And now Ashbourne last year outperformed ALICE by over 0.5 a grade per subject per student. And if you translate this, if someone was projected to get 3 Bs on ALICE, at Ashbourne, you'd end up with 2 As and a B. I mean, it is significant. Ashbourne has been one of the top performing schools in grade improvement over the last number of years. And I can only sort of suggest that this is to do with our sort of consistent and ongoing pursuit of improvement. We're relentless. We'll do whatever it takes to help students improve. Over half our students went to Russell Group universities. And in terms of the last 5 years, when you look at these lists of like the most popular destinations for our students, you know, 8 of the 10 universities are Russell Group universities. And obviously you've got places like Cambridge, Imperial, UCL in there as well. So it can very much help reassure you that you're going to send your child or you as a student are coming to a school that's going to help you go to the very best universities. Also afterwards, when I send this slide, you'll be able to click on this particular link. It just looks at, you know, individual feedback. You know, as much as performance in terms of grades and destinations is important, the feedback's critical. You know, many a student might have improved from, let's say, you know, Alice might have projected them as a CD student, but they end up getting 3 Bs. You know, Ashbourne gets as much pleasure out of that than helping a student get 3 A stars when they walk through the door the first day and we're like, actually, you know, how much support do they really need? Right, so I think that we very much value and appreciate all the amazingly positive feedback we receive at the school. And as parents and students, you should go and visit our website, watch the different tutorials, videos, and learn more about the testimonials. So in terms of September, I mean, obviously lots of, you know, uncertainty about what's going to happen in the UK. But certainly Ashbourne absolutely 1000% will be here. We've got no concerns about that whatsoever. We will be offering online distance learning as an alternative where required. So if, for whatever reason, students, even if they're in the UK and have maybe moved to a location that's outside of London now and are worried about being able to come in to London, we will be able to offer online solutions, even for subjects like fine art. We had a discussion about it last week. For those of you overseas hoping to come to the UK in September, but maybe you cannot, again, we will look to provide an online solution. Now, Ashbourne does believe that face-to-face is the best way to go, but during these times, we must be willing to adapt and be flexible, and we will do that. So lots of preparation is taking place, thinking about things like how the building's being cleaned and how we're going to do that properly, looking at temperature gauges, all these different things to make sure students are supported effectively if and when we are asked to return. And in terms of what we do, it's going to be an individualized approach as much as we will follow the directives from the government and listen to them carefully. You know, we were very proactive and quick and swift in our decisions in March. In February, we cancelled a European trip to Rome, thankfully. Actually, it was cancelled at the end of January in anticipation of what might happen in Europe. We were one of the first schools that moved online in the middle of March in anticipation for the shutdown on the 20th of March. So we are looking to be proactive. If you're coming to Ashbourne, be rest assured that's the organisation that you'll be joining. So
just a few questions, Ellie, sorry.
Go ahead.
So Ellie has asked, is there a reading list available for the A-level subjects, economics and physics?
Absolutely. And I think that what we'll do is if in terms of students applying or registered students, if you contact Chris afterwards, we can send that through.
Yeah, I have put in the chat, everyone. If you do have any further follow-up questions or you'd like to discuss anything further, please do contact us at the admissions email. It's in the chat. Thanks, Ellie. Gulchin has asked, what is the A and A star percentage for 2019?
Oh, from Ashbourne?
Yes.
It was 47%.
Okay. Thanks, Gordon. Any further questions, let me know. Fiona's asked, we didn't see history on the list of subjects for Open Week. Is it still available as an A-level course at Ashbourne?
Absolutely. There's a few subjects that weren't in there, English literature as well. They will probably take place in the 8th of June onwards.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. And then Amara has asked, where can the books be ordered from?
It's a good question. I mean, we've got, we normally obviously deliver books out to all the students in advance. We're thinking about it at the moment. Anyone that's registered as a student, we will work out a way, whether it's an online version or physical version, for you to get the textbooks in advance so you can work over the summer if required.
Okay, thanks, Lee. Thanks for those questions. Any further questions, please let us know in that chat.
Great. So in terms of entry to Ashbourne, again, this is quite loose, but it just gives you some sort of markers. Usually we expect students to have at least 5 grades at GCSE of 6 or above. That's a B to A star equivalent, and at least a B grade in a specific subject you want to study. We also need to think very carefully. If you're going to take something like chemistry, but you struggled at GCSE and maths, is that really a sensible choice? You know, but I think what you'll find at Ashbourne, we're going to be far more flexible in this regard to look at individual cases and understand why it happened rather than just giving a blanket no. So we do look at this on a case-by-case basis. Also, let's imagine at GCSE, you got 2 A stars and the rest were sort of like, I don't know, 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s, and you might worry about whether Ashbourne would consider you. My question would be, well, what did you get the A stars in? And if they were art subjects and let's say a language, and that's what you're going to do at A level, then the school's obviously going to be far more flexible with your application. We're looking to take on students that are suitable for the subjects they take at Ashbourne, and we will look at each case on an individual basis in line with our kind of ethos as a school. We do subject-specific testing, for example, drama and music auditions, and also obviously if you're taking maths, etc., English, you have to do suitable tests accordingly. So if you're interested in applying to the school, this is the Ashbourne email address and telephone number, and obviously go onto our website to find out more information about the school. So tips for success at A-level, I think a few things. It's a big, even though they've closed the gap, so the gap maybe sort of visually was like this between GCSE and A-level, maybe it's like that now, but it's still a gap. So you must use the summer effectively. A-level really digs deep into the learning. You cannot just afford to sort of regurgitate things you've learned. You've got to understand it. You've got to read around the subject. You've got to really know what you're talking about. So get your books early and prepare for September. Think very carefully about the degree programs you might be considering and what you could do over the summer to differentiate yourself from other students. And with A-levels, you cannot leave things to the last minute. GCSE, some of the more able students would maybe get away with, you know, leaving it until Easter to revise. You can't do that with A-levels. It needs to be consistent. Ask questions in class. If you're too shy to ask questions in class, ask them outside of class, and use each half term effectively. You know, be proactive to get feedback from your teachers, but also look internally. Consider how can you look to improve. Looking for signs within yourself of how to improve is a brilliant thing to consider. And I think the whole time, you know, you should be looking at the ways in which you can improve your performance, and using half-term assessments and the feedback you've got are great ways to come up with individual targets. So what's happening going forward? We tomorrow, if you haven't already registered this, I hope today you've enjoyed it. So tomorrow we'll be going step by step through the university application process in the UK. And then from Monday the 1st of June onwards, we'll be doing subject-specific webinars. Then in June, there's a 4-week introduction to sort of mathematics program. Now, what this is for those students looking to apply for A-level further mathematics, we do A-level maths in the first year of A-levels. So if you're looking to do further maths for those students, you've got to do A-levels in the first year, then you carry on to further maths in the second year. Obviously, if you're a normal A-level maths, you can do it over 2 years. But this course is not for people that are just doing A-level maths. It's specifically for those students that are going to study, let's say, further maths and want to go into places like Oxbridge, Imperial, LSE, etc. And then finally, There's a literature essay competition with a cash prize of £500. Very interesting. And if you want to find more information about that, again, Chris is the person that's leading that. There's a question that's been posed which you need to respond to, and I think it's a minimum of 1,000 words that need to be written, and just some interesting things that you could all be getting involved in over the next couple of weeks to sort of keep yourself busy and also to learn more about sort of different programs at the school. So that is the end of the presentation today. Is there any questions or further questions that you'd like to ask?
I do have some questions in the chat here, Lee. Ji-Young has asked, do we have to apply to do EPQ before school starts?
No. And what I'd say with the EPQ, I think the EPQ is a fabulous way, which we'll talk about tomorrow, to kind of show your real interest and love towards the subject matter that you're taking. You don't actually have to end up gaining an EPQ, which is an extended project qualification. You don't have to end up gaining it. I think the process of doing it and what you learn from it is far more valuable than the actual end AS grade qualification that you get.
Okay, let me know if that's answered your question, Ji-Young. Charlie has asked, what can students do to prepare this summer for fine arts?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this. So one of the things that we're looking at is the kind of materials, especially if it has to be taught remotely in some way, the type of materials that they're going to need, the research that you need to do. Again, Charlie, if you contact Chris separately, we'll be in contact with an email to talk about all the different things you could do as a student to develop for that subject.
Okay, thank you. Question here from Adelka. How do we enter the literature competition?
Chris, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. So there is a web page up on the website. All you need to do, Adelka, is submit your essay to essaycompetition@ashbournecollege.co.uk. That's the submission email. Just have to send that through. You need to make sure that you put your name on it and answer the question fully with at least 1,000 words. As long as you submit it before the deadline, that is it. But I would suggest just having a look on our website for the details of the question and a little bit more information about the things that you need to do to complete that. But I can post the link to that in the chat very shortly, so just look out for that. Question here from Evan Lee. Are there programs to help with law applications and the LNAT exam?
Yes, we do LNAT preparation. I've been speaking to some of the kids that are going to apply from year 12 to year 13 for law at university. I've come up with a list of a variety of different things they can look to do. Again, if you get in contact with me separately, I'm happy to share those with you. Some good things to get on with.
Okay, thanks, Evan. A question here from Isabella Lee. Do you have a gold D of E program?
We don't. It's something we've considered, but I think that what we look to do, again, with things like EPQ or many of the other things we look to do, I think as individual students, there's many ways in which you can develop sort of super curricular tasks that help differentiate you from other students. Now, this is one of the things we'll talk about in the discussion tomorrow. The DOE, I think, is an excellent thing to do. And I think it may well help with university applications. But if you're applying for engineering at Cambridge, saying that you went on a DOE is a good point. But there are more powerful super curricular things you could do to convince Cambridge or LSE Imperial that you are the right candidate for their university. So unfortunately, at the school, we don't offer it, but there's many other things we do that could keep you occupied and help differentiate yourself from other students.
Ali has asked, will we get help with the BMAT and UCAT tests?
Yes. So Amy Youngman, who's our sort of head of biology and deputy head of sixth form, she runs a medical school program on a weekly basis. And this does a variety of things, helps prepare, obviously, for university interviews, helps to prepare for BMAT, UCAT, and looks at sort of keeping students up to date about sort of relevant sort of medical issues. So absolutely, we do prepare students for that.
Question here from Atul Lee. He's asking about the 14-day quarantine for international students and whether they would need to come early to the school.
Well, it's an interesting point. I mean who knows? The landscape is changing on a, I'd say weekly, I think it's daily basis. I think it's sort of watch this space. I think if you're being prudent, then it would be recommended maybe to arrive in the middle of August, because I think maybe many countries will look to enforce that. So that would be my suggestion. But obviously that might throw up a number of different issues. I think during this year, we just got to be a bit flexible. But if you're asking me to choose, I would say try and arrive mid-August, and that would obviously alleviate any issues about the start date.
A question here from Basir Ali. She says, for students who are already registered to the school, when would they receive their new school timetables?
The time, I mean, this is one of the things about Ashbourne's timetable is we do offer any combination of subjects, which I'm the head of the timetabling team. So it is a real challenge to make that work. So we don't actually publish the timetables until right up until the day before the year starts. And this year also will be even more challenging because we'll have to think very carefully about how that timetable fits in with social distancing measures. So you should be prepared that any time between 9 and 6, Monday to Friday, you could have a lesson. Obviously, you won't have lessons all during that time, but you should not book things outside of Ashbourne during those time slots, unless it's had prior agreement with the school.
A question here, Lee, from Ewan. He says, are there any programs to help with PPE applications?
Well, again, what I would say there is we just do sort of individualized support. I mean, what most of the students that are looking to go along to sort of PPE would be thinking about an Oxbridge type application. And therefore, we do offer an Oxbridge program. So that's run by Will Stockland. And that helps to kind of look at the ways in which we can differentiate your application from others. So he'll help tailor, the subject choices and what you should do in terms of getting yourself ready for individual colleges at Oxbridge. With the PPE side, then he works with individual subject teachers to make sure we're offering you the right support there. So whilst it's not like a weekly program, there is, the Oxbridge team meet every sort of few weeks to make sure that students are prepared thoroughly.
And Charlie's asked, Lee, will tomorrow's seminar touch on the overseas university application process?
That's a good point. It isn't aimed to do that. But what I would say is, I've been speaking to a number of different students about US applications, and I think Chris and I are intending to do one towards the end of June. So it's, each year 5 to 10 students at Ashbourne apply to American universities. So we are now becoming more specialist in that area. But we also deal with applications to Hong Kong and many other universities around the world. But for now, I would recommend, rather than expect it being in the meeting tomorrow, book a separate appointment with me, and then we can go through the different issues that you have on an individual basis.
Isabella's asked, do you have any SEN support for learning disabilities such as ADHD, dyslexia, etc.? Yeah,
but the first thing I would say to you is, Ashbourne really is a sort of dream world for any student that has got a special educational need, purely because of the small classes. But by that point alone, Ashbourne has a variety of students that benefit from getting lots of individual support for teachers. So that's the first thing. Secondly, as a part of the SEN team, I work with Fran and Simone to offer individualized sort of support programs to SEN students. And it will vary, as you rightly know. Each student is slightly different. So the first instance, obviously, will get them retested, because when you move from GCSE to A-level, you still do need to get retested. That doesn't necessarily mean with an EdPsych report. It will very much depend on the type of situation of the candidate. But then after that, we're then giving individual sort of tips to teachers about how to support students more effectively, thinking about, for example, mock examinations and the stress and anxiety that SEN students are more likely to experience, and then just having sort of go-to people that SEN students can go and see whenever they've got particular issues. So yes, absolutely, there is quite a lot of support in place for SEN students. For those of you that are still in the room, thank you very much for joining today's webinar. I hope that it was informative. I hope it was helpful. If you have further questions or want to go in more detail, please do contact the admissions team and they will book a suitable appointments. But I very much hope that you're all well, and thank you very much for your time.